Good morning. Welcome to our sixth in a series of speakers for our Lifelong Learning Speaker Series. I'm Molly McClintock, and I'd like to invite on the screen Rick Maitri, our guest this morning. We have an appropriately spooky topic for this late October day. Would somebody just give me a thumbs up that you're hearing me all right? My computer is making a funny noise. Okay, let's see. Leanne, is that yes? Thank you, Leanne. Hi, Rick. You're hearing me okay?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So anyway, we have an appropriately spooky topic this morning for our late October session, and we're going to be talking about the infamous Black Sisters of Christiansburg with filmmaker Rick Maitri. Rick is on staff at the community college here in Christiansburg and Dublin. He works as their graphics coordinator. He does photography and filming and all kinds of things. But what we're really going to have him talk about today is something he did outside of his work life, because Rick earned an MFA at the Akira Kurosawa School of Film at Anaheim University. That's a pretty famous name that all of us will have heard. And as part of his work there, he did a film about a portion of the Black Sisters story. It's quite a long and complicated story, and I hope some of you longtime New River Valley people are familiar with the legend of the Black Sisters. Some of you may not be. So let's give them a quick recap. So the Black Sisters, whose name is not Black, were here in Christiansburg about 120 odd years ago and worked at the Virginia Academy for Women, or
Montgomery Female College.
Thank you, Montgomery County College, or a female academy. And swirling around them were a series of mysterious deaths and large life insurance policies and a criminal court case, and the sisters wore black to the trial, which is where they get the moniker, the Black Sisters. Is all of that accurate so far, Rick?
Very much so. They were actually dubbed the Black Sisters when they were in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, before they came to Christiansburg.
Okay. From wearing black all the time?
Yes, and I think it may have been part of their religion. Their mother always wore black, and it may have been to mourn their father's death. I'm not sure.
Okay. All right, good. But there are lots of things about this story that we don't know if it's true. For example, people say they were only ever seen outside at night. Woo, which would be hard to do if you were a teacher in a college. There are also tales of hauntings here in Christiansburg. So the academy was on the grounds of what is now the Montgomery County Tech Center, which was the old Christiansburg Middle School, if you're familiar. And so, of course, there are stories of hauntings in that building. There are stories of hauntings at Sunset Cemetery up on North Franklin Street. So lots of tale. I mean, this is an old story, but it persists today in the folklore of Christiansburg. So Rick's going to help us sort fact from fiction, tell us not only about the Black Sisters, but also about the process of making this film. So I sent a link out last week. I hope you've had a chance to watch it. If not, after today, I hope you'll be intrigued to watch it. And he also shared with us a document that he wrote to help explain the process of the filming. Now, I'll be honest, I got lost in a lot of the equipment, but I got the gist of how hard it was to film this. So, Rick, whenever you're ready, take it away. And I hope the rest of you will participate in the discussion through the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen.
Great. Thank you so much for having me here. And it's a subject that I could talk about all day long. I first got involved in this actually just a couple of years ago in August of 2021. I was attending weekend screenwriting sessions with an Icelandic filmmaker who I respect very much, Olaf de Fleur. He's a magical teacher, is all I can say. And so he asked us, what one project do you want to work on? I said, I want to work on a documentary on the Black sisters. And so I explained what it was. And I went through so much research during the following weeks. He said, stop researching, start writing, and don't do the documentary first. He said, do that drudgery after you do a feature film. And so he kind of pointed me in that direction. So that November, I think it was November 19th. Anyway, it was towards the end of November. We did a 6-minute short in Pulaski at the old Maple Lodge, which used to be a hotel, and then it was a boarding house, and it's like over 5,000 square feet. It's a maze, and I believe that place is haunted. Uh, I'll tell this story very quickly. I was in one day preparing on the second floor. There's 3 floors plus an attic and a basement. I never went into the basement. Don't want to.
Yeah.
But I was on the second floor near the back of the house, and I was hanging drapes so I could match the sunlight coming into the rooms, because we were using 2 different rooms as one room. We wanted the bathroom to be upstairs, which in real life, the bathroom is upstairs. I've been in that house in New Jersey, and I have a film. I probably won't show it today, but it's part of Bethlehem Community Church in East Orange, New Jersey now. And they allowed me to go in there, and former residents came in, which was really cool, and showed me where everything was, because right now everything's torn apart. So I was in that.
Had they known the legend of what happened in that house?
They didn't until after they had already lived there for a while.
Ooh.
And then one of their cousins turned them onto my Facebook page.
Okay.
And they got all excited about it. And so, so I was in that house in Maple Lodge. I'll make this very brief. And there was this constant banging on the wall. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. I'm not scared right now, but I'm just going to let it go. And so I'm hanging drapes, as I said, to make the sunlight match in the different rooms. And so I said, I don't think I've been to the 3rd floor. I'm going to go up there. And it's starting to get dark at that point. I took one step onto the stairs, and I hear, it was just like out of a horror flick. I'm like,
nope.
Okay, I'm out of here. And there was another instance that happened when even the mayor was in there with my wife, and they were touring, and doors were closing behind them, and electronic equipment was going haywire. But I'll get on with the Black sisters now. I wanted to clear the air of all the legends and things, and people still tell me about legends. And I think that it is very possible that the old middle school is haunted, but it wouldn't be haunted by the Black sisters. If it would be haunted by anyone, it would have been John Sneed, whose nickname was Wardlaw. His middle name was Wardlaw, but they always called him Wardlaw. On March 2nd, 1906, and the circumstances are still not clear, he caught on fire. He was either lighting a fire in a stove using lamp oil, and he got it on his night clothes, and he caught on fire. There's a legend that says the door was locked from the outside, and they set him on fire in his bed. But he did die approximately 8 hours later. You could imagine how terrible that would be from his injuries. But I will go ahead and introduce you to the sisters. These are the only sisters I'll really talk about. There was another sister, which is Bessie Gertrude Spindle, who taught in Christiansburg. Her son, her husband was a lawyer, and her son actually became a justice in the state of Virginia. The Wardlaws were widely known. There was one Supreme Court justice from South Carolina named Wardlaw. He was an uncle. They were all doctors, lawyers, and preachers, and pretty prestigious family, and well-educated family. So let me share this screen if I can. Okay. Are you seeing it now?
It's just coming in. Yep, I see the 3 sisters.
Okay. So Caroline was the oldest sister. She was born in 1845. And at about 16 years old, she moved to New York, probably to escape probably to escape the ravages of the Civil War. So she moved to New York. I believe she moved to New York with an uncle, and she eventually became a teacher there in the public school system, and then eventually became a principal there for a very long time until she was forced to retire because she was mentally ill. And from what I understand, and I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, but from studying um, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, I believe she was bipolar and had other contributing factors to her mental illness. But she was forced to retire about 1902. Her husband died in New York about 1901, and some people think that she killed him. She may have hastened his demise, but I don't think she killed him because he had suffered for a very long time. And I will introduce him here in a little bit. His name was Robert Maxwell Martin. But so Caroline lived in New York most of her life, or yeah, a large part of her life, until she was about 58 when she was forced to retire. So Mary, the middle of the three, she was born in 1848, and she and Virginia were very close. Mary married another Civil War hero who was also mayor of a town near Macon, Georgia, and they all lived down there in a mansion called the Sneed Wardlaw Mansion. Miss V.O. Virginia Oceana Wardlaw. She was born in 1852 in August, so she was a Leo, and as her astrological sign would have it, she was very civic minded, very outgoing. She was described as brilliant, lovely, elegant, soft spoken. I couldn't imagine her being a murderer, but when things happen the way I think they happen, I can understand how she came to do what she may have done. So those are the three main sisters. There were others. There was a brother who died in Christiansburg, I think of an illness. His name was John Banks Wardlaw Jr. And he was a Princeton graduate. So I'm going to continue to the next page. And let's see if I can just hit page down. Yeah, okay. Here's Fletcher Sneed. He's a son of Mary Sneed, and hard worker, another war hero. And he was married to Vashti McLaurin first. That marriage was broken up by Caroline. The reason for the divorce was because it was alienation of affection caused by interference by Caroline and Mary. So Fletcher and Vashti McLaurin, they split. They had a son named Robert. Robert, he committed suicide about 1955. He had moved to Florida, I guess, perhaps to get away from all the stuff. One of the lady who shared this photo with me, Allison Steele Wilson, who lives in Nashville, her husband is a descendant of Annie McLaurin, who was married to John Wardlaw Sneed. So, you know, the brothers married the sisters. And so Annie corresponded with Allison's husband's grandmother quite often. So we have letters from Annie concerning what Caroline's interference. And I will present one of those here in a little bit, which is scary and fascinating, actually. So O.C. Martin is the reason this whole thing came together. You know, O.C. was killed. I don't know if it was intentional murder. I know it was probably, okay, I'll put it this way. I'll call it a death. It was murder, I do believe. Caroline claimed that she finally admitted that she gave her morphine on November 28th, 1909. And but OC was found in the tub on her knees with her head under the faucet. And if you watch my film, you could see why I portrayed it as I did, as Caroline drowning her.
Mhm.
There was a little bit of water in her lungs, but there was also morphine in her system.
Mhm.
In an OC's condition, she was only about 80 pounds because she had been starved. Um, when the doctor got there, he thought it was more or less a kid. She was 24 years old, actually. And being in that bathroom in New Jersey and knowing where she, what she experienced, the last part of her life, that was perhaps a blessing. And it is possible that she became a morphine addict because they made her a morphine addict. And I believe Virginia succumbed to morphine use towards the end because, according to one of her relatives, Mrs. J.P. Wardlaw, J.P. Wardlaw was a reverend. There was kind of a eulogy written for her in I think it was a religious magazine, and it was very flattering to Virginia. And she said that Virginia had suffered a severe back injury when she was a child, and that she had to halt her educational pursuits a couple of times because of that. Here's an very interesting to me. One of those pauses in her educational pursuit was in 1884. OC was born in 1885, early 1885, and Virginia had left Wesleyan College in Macon to work in Christiansburg with her aunt, O.S. Pollock, doing supposed missionary work and things like that. There are newspaper accounts of where she helped the students make money, and she was also the chair of the local Shakespearean Society. But it's interesting that she paused her education at that point. And so that's one of the things that makes me think that Virginia was actually OC's mother and not Caroline.
So now, Rick, part of what was damning for the sisters was the fact that there was a large insurance policy taken out on the name of OC.
Absolutely. There was about $24,000 in money in dollars that day, which I'm not sure what that is equivalent to now. But the family learned early, back when Virginia was 25 years old. There was a fellow named Otis Dyer, and he was a surveyor. He was a veteran of the War of 1812. He was a surveyor. He loved the Wardlaw family. He ended up in New York, and he bequeathed all of his money to the Wardlaw family and apparently the banker that did the will. Now, there was a codicil that was included after the fact. Well, I wouldn't say after the fact, allegedly before Otis died. And we're talking about $1.5 million in money those days.
Wow.
That Otis left. And so in this handwritten codicil, I'm probably saying it wrong, this handwritten addendum by the banker, more money was given to the Wardlaws, and more money was given to the banker and his family. So figure that one out. Right. And the person who testified that Otis read and understood that codicil was O.S. Pollock, Aunt O.S. Pollock.
Uh-huh.
So it could be legit. I am not sure.
Right. Now, can you verify that there was also an insurance payout for the son who died in the fire?
There was, and that insurance went to Virginia. Mm-hmm. The reason they said it went to Virginia is because she paid for John Wardlaw Sneed's education at Vanderbilt. And she was known to pay for students' educations. People who had gone to Murfreesboro, the sole female college, some of the students, she would pay their tuition, to universities.
Interesting mix of personality.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they said that that's why the insurance went to her. Now, there was another policy on him that Mary held that was never cashed in.
Hmm.
So perhaps, she just didn't want to cash in on her son's death. Maybe that was the case. I don't know. But she knew it was there. She had to know it was there. Um, okay. And there's Mother Martha Wardlaw. She made the statement to neighbors when they had left. Okay, they went from Murfreesboro to Christiansburg to New York and New Jersey, but mainly New York. And they were skipping out on rent. They were living high on the hog there for a while. I mean, they had some money, they had a lot of money. And then they spent it all perhaps on luxuries and morphine. But Mother Martha said to a neighbor, she said, "I am afraid of Virginia." She said, "She drags me, quote, from pillar to post. And when we lived in the South, we had lots of money, but now we have nothing."
Hmm.
And so Martha outlived, she outlived all her dogs. Well, except for Bessie. She was actually, I think she was I think she went to Oakland eventually. Yeah, she went to Oakland, California, and she is in a vault next to her daughter, Mary, who also moved to Oakland after she was acquitted. Okay. And then, of course, Aunt O.S. Pollock, the first Oceana Seaborn, Allgood Pollock. What a name. But uh, allegedly, she didn't like her name Oceana, so she went by OS a lot. And I think that's where Virginia picked up VO. She started calling herself VO after she spent time with OS in Christiansburg. But Virginia had been in Christiansburg before actually teaching. And yeah, OS Pollock, man, she was a go-getter. She, of course, bought Christiansburg, the Montgomery Female College, in 1876 at a public auction. She turned it over to Mr. and Mrs. Baird. He was a reverend. And so she remained principal. She went to Albany and taught at a school in Albany, Oregon. She stayed there for a while, and it's kind of funny because one summer she said, I'm gonna go south and visit." Well, then she goes down to Birmingham, Alabama, and opens the Pollock Stevens Institute with one of her former students, Cynthia Stevens. And so, if you go to Christiansburg, you'll see the little monolith there, the monument to O.S. Pollock from the Stevens from the Pollock Stevens Institute.
And where is that, Rick? In front of the old school?
No, it is actually, if you go to Sunset Cemetery, go to the very top, there's an old section, and you'll see the what is it called? Is Stili? It's just it's a monolith.
Okay.
And then you'll see Virginia's broken stone, which I'm not even sure that's hers. I still have my doubts. That could be her father's headstone, because there's no proof that it's hers. And then there's one base right next to that. And the reason I think it may be John Wardlaw Sr.'s headstone is because when he died in Murfreesboro, he said that he wanted to be buried next to his son in Christiansburg. So there's no record. Unfortunately, there's no records in Christiansburg. Okay. And then there's also a grave that has no marker, period, which may be it may be John Wardlaw Sneed, because I would assume they wouldn't send him back to Linville, Tennessee, or Pulaski, Tennessee. So he may be buried there.
So we don't know for sure if any of the three sisters are in Christiansburg to this day.
It is documented that Virginia was brought back to Christiansburg and buried in Sunset. Okay. So she is there. Okay. Now, it's definite that Mary is in Oakland, California, and that and I contacted New Hope Cemetery. I think it's New Hope. I know it's Hope something in Westchester County, New York, and Caroline is buried there, 2 spaces above Ossie.
Okay. Okay.
both in unmarked graves. But Robert Maxwell Martin, Osie's father, is actually buried very near there in a and he has a headstone because Caroline, even though there was insurance on Robert and she received a some veterans benefit because of his death, she claimed bankruptcy or whatever at that. Well, yeah, it was about that time she filed bankruptcy, and so she had the military bury him so she wouldn't have to pay for it. She was a shyster. She was definitely a shyster. There is evidence um, all through the New York real estate and property records and um, things that she did, like when she first came to Murfreesboro. Now, this is interesting. Virginia invited her, um, I think, against Mary's advice, because according, I'm jumping around a little bit here. According to Judge J. Ike, during Caroline's first insanity hearing, which was petitioned by Bessie Spindle and Albert Wardlaw, her brother and sister, who were both in, well, Albert might have been in Florida at the time, but Bessie was in Christiansburg. So they came to New Jersey and they petitioned for her to be declared insane. Well, after several examinations by doctors who did declare her insane, Judge J. Ike said she started experiencing or presenting dementia-like symptoms in 1885. That's the year, of course, that Osie was born, allegedly in Manhattan. But some evidence shows that Osie was not born in Manhattan, but in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So it's
And
a huge mess.
You question her parentage, even so, yeah.
I believe that Robert Maxwell Martin was the father, but Virginia was the mother.
Okay.
And I believe that was the reason Caroline went on this tear of vengeance to destroy anything and everything that Virginia loved and worked for.
Okay.
And then she finally, like the devil, she finally brought Virginia down to her level. And Mary was still kind of in the periphery, because Mary had to take care of Mother Martha. Somebody had to take care of her. Her husband's dead. She's got nobody else. So they had to drag her along. And so after, and this is interesting, what the first thing that Caroline did when she came to Murfreesboro, she bought Soul College out from under Virginia with fraud. She claimed she had more assets than she did. She had a pension of about, what was it, $500 a year? And she had already borrowed on it. But because the bankers, Virginia was recruited to Murfreesboro by a banker. She left Price's College as senior teacher there to be president of Soul College in Murfreesboro. And so she was well respected and well trusted. So here comes Caroline, and she buys with no money. She pulled a fast one. She buys the college. Well, Virginia tries, she goes to this lady in Chattanooga, Elsie Lowe. Now, Elsie's husband, S.B. Lowe, he was very wealthy. He owned a big metalworks factory in Chattanooga. They had a house on the mountain. They had a house in the town, in the city. And they had been lifelong friends of the Wardlaws. Now, here's a kicker. Almost as soon as Osie was born, I believe in Chattanooga, Caroline takes Osie to Mrs. S.B. Lowe. Elsie Lowe was her name, and drops her. For 4 or 5 years, Elsie Lowe raises Osie as her own. And she loved that child. And then 4 or 5 years later, Caroline pops in and takes the kid back because I believe, because um, John Wardlaw Sr. is about to die.
Mm.
And I do have a photo of them, which I'll show all the kids and OC with the grandfather here in just a second, which I first found in a newspaper, but Allison Steele Wilson found it in an attic. She found the original in an attic, and I freaked out. So, okay. So there's O.S. Pollock and Robert Maxwell Martin, who carried a slug in his lung from the Civil War. So he was constantly sick. And in a place called Wilder Park near Louisville, he built a very lavish house. And I don't think Caroline wanted to be there. So conveniently, the well-insured house burned. She moves back to New York with OC, and Robert is left there alone. He lived in servants' quarters that were left, according to people who lived nearby. And by the way, Robert was after after the war, he was a real go-getter. He was a tobacco broker, often traveled to Europe to sell tobacco, constantly traveling to the South. He set up shop, had warehouses in Brooklyn. And so essentially they had set up a household in Brooklyn as well. So here are the kids, all the kids except for Hugh, which Hugh Martin, 7-year-old Hugh Martin in 1888 fell down the stairs of Caroline's apartment. 7-year-old who was well insured. He died 3 days later. So, you can take that for what it sounds like, either murder or an accident. But when you've got a 7-year-old that is highly insured, and I can't remember the amount, but it was a very large amount.
Was that, do you know, what did it come across in your research? Was that a common thing for wealthy families to do in that era, is to insure these young children?
I don't know. That's a very good question. And I've thought about that because, they could have looked at it as an investment, to cash in later once it matured.
Yeah.
Because I know my mom had insurance on me and my sister.
Okay.
And then when we got a certain age, she said, well, what do you want to do? You want to invest this money, or do you want to cash it in?
Okay.
So, it was, it could have been a common thing, actually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, they certainly had their share of misfortune, if that's in fact what it was.
Yeah. And with John, with Wardlaw, his misfortune, it came in triples. Virginia convinced him to come to Christiansburg to teach. He was a Vanderbilt graduate. And so he came to Christiansburg to teach. His wife, Annie, did not want him to come. She had been sick with TB, but she did recover. One of the things that was asserted was that John committed suicide that day when he was burned because he was distraught over his wife's illness. However, like I said, she recovered. And so I don't know if they had gotten him hooked on morphine, because he did seem to be accident prone. On a trip to Richmond on a train, he was on the train with Virginia, and somewhere between Roanoke and Lynchburg, he fell off the train or jumped off the train,
or was pushed off the train.
Well, one of the attendees on the train said it looked like he jumped, so it's hard to tell, and he never said that anybody pushed him. So he ended up in the hospital in Lynchburg. And Virginia stayed at a hotel there for a couple of days. And the funny thing is, which makes me think that she was nursing her bad back and maybe even doing morphine at that time. So this would have been around, I can't remember, 05, 06, something like that. Probably 06. They ran Virginia out of the hotel because she was hogging the tub.
Right.
She would stay in the bathtub too long, and they said, okay, you got to go. So, okay. And then Fletcher Sneed, who super hard worker, war hero. He owned a logging company. He had married Vashti McLaurin, which, like I said, their marriage was broken up by Caroline, and they even called the cops on Caroline to get her away from the house. One speculation is that Vashti and Fletcher split because they were in fear of for Robert's life from Caroline. So he ends up marrying his first cousin Osie. They were married 3 times. They were never divorced. They were married 3 times, which is very strange. They said it was so weird because first time they said the family didn't agree with the marriage. So finally, but from what I understand, Caroline attended the first marriage. It was just a big mess, but it was a manipulation by Caroline and perhaps even Mary to get those two together.
And did they have a child?
They had 2 children.
Mm-hmm.
The first girl, she died immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Fletcher, he was soft-hearted and he was family-oriented. I do believe, even though he left Vashti. And like I said, that may have been because they were in fear for Robert's life. But when the baby daughter died, they couldn't bury her immediately because the ground was frozen in Westchester, New York. And so he came back in the spring and had her buried properly. And then they had another son, and that he died in a children's hospital. He was not well. So, you've got first cousins who are, having children, it doesn't bode well to begin with. So, oops, didn't mean to do that. Okay. And Albert Sneed is who Mary, he ended up taking her in. Albert lived in Reno. He got married in Reno. Mary was there for the marriage after she was acquitted. They all ended up living near Oakland, California, where Mary lived out her life until I think she died in 1937. She just wanted to put it all behind her. And so Albert took good care of her. And so here are the Sneed McLaurins. I also have a picture of all the McLaurin sisters. There were like 5 or 6 of them, beautiful ladies. And this is John and Annie's wedding. Fletcher and Vashti were already married at that point. And that was I can't keep all these all these dates in my mind, but I'm thinking this was 1903. Okay, and here's Seoul Female College in Murfreesboro. I believe this may be the only photo that exists that has all 3 sisters and Osie in it. I would zoom in, but you really can't make out the details. It appears as if Virginia is sitting on the left side, and they're all wearing black except for Osie. On the right side of the door, just on the right side of the door, there's a heavy lady sitting in a rocking chair. I'm 99% sure that's Caroline, and standing behind her is the auburn-haired Osie. And sitting on the rail, I believe that's Mary, because in multiple photos I've seen of Mary, she's been facing to the side for whatever reason. But Bill Jakes is all the folks in Tennessee that I've met when I went down there. They're just so kind, taking me around to different places and different museums and whatnot, and showing me pictures of Virginia. Which, by the way, that photo of Virginia is a photo that I took. I went in search of when I went to Tennessee. I said, I've got to find that photograph. And so I thought it was at the Ransom Museum where I first stopped. But the fellow who met us there, who is now passed, who was just a super guy, he took us to Cannonsburg Village. And the museum there was closed because of structural damage. But I want to see if I can bring this over. Do y'all see a different screen now?
Yes.
Okay. This is the day that I got the photo of Virginia. and I took the photo off of this collage of
Oh, wow.
students, and you can see the caution tape there. The museum was actually closed, but Julia Harris, she brought it out for me and let me take pictures of it. So they were just all super. And it was over Thanksgiving, so it was like, or was it Christmas? I can't remember. It was a holiday, and so for them to be there and to be so generous was just awesome, awesome. So the Reverend John B. Wardlaw, uh, he was well known throughout the South. He was a sought after speaker. Albert was a teacher. John was a teacher. Fletcher owned a sawmill and then a lumber company. And then just shortly before Ossie was killed in 1909, he disappeared to Canada, assumed the name of John Lucas, or was it Joe? Yeah, it was John Lucas. Was working in a hotel as a cook in St. Catharines, Ontario.
Mm.
And so I believe that the fella in back here is Rufus McLaurin. And both John and Fletcher were afraid of him. It's big brother Rufus.
Brother.
Yeah. Okay. And so, of course, this is Montgomery Female College. I put the H on Christiansburg because at some point it did have an H on it. And now Pittsburgh is the only city in the United States that has an H at the end of the burg.
Mm.
As far as I know, I'm pretty sure that's true. I used to live in Pittsburgh, but this is 1880, before the sisters came, because Virginia didn't come to set up shop, so to speak, until 1903. That's when she first started scouting out the place, when Aunt Ossie turned it over to the sisters and to Martha. And so it wasn't until 1903 that they were even really seen. And it wasn't until, and Ossie didn't come until about 1905, because she was still finishing up studies at Seoul Female College. And so she and Caroline were probably still there. And Mary had left and gone to Oregon, Colorado. She had gone to Colorado with Albert and had taken Mother Martha with them.
Rick, what can you tell us about the school? What did they teach here?
Oh my goodness. Virginia was extremely progressive, and it wasn't just, it wasn't just like homemaker type things. It was, Latin, music, German, languages, literature,
Okay.
really heady stuff. I usually don't use that word, but yeah, Virginia was, she was on the cutting edge, as far as technology and everything, back in the around 1880s, she was using the stereopticon to do public presentations and stuff, with visual aids. She would do seminars, on travel, religion, literature, all kinds of things. She was awesome. She was, like I said, very civic minded. She loved hosting. She seemed to always be, the organizer of big events. And, when she was at Price's school, she was not only senior teacher, but she was also the chair of the Tennessee Association of Public Teachers in Literature, or something like that. She was the state chair of that. She founded a library at Price's College for young ladies. Not only did she found the library, but she designed the cherry shelves that they built for it too. She was quite a well-rounded lady. Oh, and just little idiosyncrasies. Somebody said that she always wore a beautiful ring on her right index finger, and the way she wrote, she would hold the pen between the index and the middle fingers, and she would write like that. And I saw her signature on a diploma once. Oh my gosh, what an elegant handwriting she had. I sound like a fan, and I kind of am. She's, it was kind of like seeing pictures of her original pictures and stuff. It was like seeing a rock star almost. Okay. Now, if anyone watched the film, there's a part where they're standing in the bathroom, and Sergeant O'Neill is questioning Virginia. Virginia's standing in the doorway. Virginia doesn't want to answer. And he says, "Where did you live before?" She goes, "What does that matter?" And then he gets angry and he goes, "Where did you live before?" She goes, "The Flatlands, Brooklyn." And so I did some research, and this photograph was taken about the same time, it was just shortly after Osi was killed, by a very famous photographer, and it's property of New York Historical Society. And it's the way I figured it, where that yellow line is where that lamp post would have been. And that lane, you see where the fences are, that lane is still kind of sort of there. So that's 48th Street and Mill Lane in Brooklyn. And this is the death house, which I visited last summer. Like I said, now it's part of Bethlehem Community Church. Pastor Clifford Smith, just a wonderful guy, allowed us to go in, even though it's under renovation. And this gets into, I'll show a different, this program here is called E-Draw Mind by Wondershare. And if you want to do timelines or any other kinds of charts, this is my timeline of the Wardlaw family. And it doesn't include everything I've got.
You have really done a lot of research.
Yeah, one of the great things about this is that if you see where the links are, you can link to, like I would put stuff in Google Drive. You can link to the news stories there, or photographs, or things like that. And of course, this is the year 1909 that Osi was killed.
Yeah.
And then, of course, David Pollock Sneed, Osi's son, was born August 2nd, but he also died that year. He was sick from the beginning. And as you can see, October, Carolina, Virginia, were in Louisville meeting with real estate people. They were trying to sell Osi's property, and the people were very interested in buying it. But the problem was they didn't have Osi's signature, because this property was left to her by her father. And I don't know what Caroline got out of his death, insurance wise or whatever. I know she probably got his military pension and things like that, but he left a lot of land to Osi.
So here's another motive, right?
Bingo.
Yeah. Well, before you get into too much of the talk about the film, if you're transitioning, I would like a quick summary of the trial. For those of us who watched the film, we're sort of left. Ooh.
Yes. So what happened? They were all arrested and charged by December 22nd. Virginia was the first one to be arrested because of the November 29th incident. The question was, it's like, you've been in the house for 24 hours. She's been upstairs for 24 hours. You didn't bother to check on her. So, things smell fishy. And so they start to round them all up. They find Mary and Martha living on 42nd Street, which is just down the street, essentially, from the, what they call that triangular building on Broadway.
Flatiron.
Yes, the Flatiron building. So they find them living there in squalor. They have absolutely no money. Some of the guys from Princeton who knew the other John Banks Wardlaw Jr., they helped them out with rent and food and whatnot for a little bit. But they eventually arrest Mary, hold her on conspiracy. And then Caroline was very elusive. She was running around under assumed names. They finally caught up to her, arrested her. So they're all in what they call the tombs. So before the trial keeps on, as far as delays, there's constant delays. Wilbur Mott, the prosecutor, he wants to go on vacation. Other people want to go on vacation. It becomes summer, they're arrested in December, and there's constant delays because, they want to come south. which they found a lot of really cool stuff. Wilbur Mott and his assistant, when they came south, that's when a lot of things were revealed. But during the trial, before the trial, because of all the delays, Virginia finally starved herself to death, and died August 10th, 1910, in Essex County Jail. And then, even though Caroline and Mary were in the same building, they wouldn't let them see her, wouldn't let them be with her. However, Albert Wardlaw and Bessie Spindle were there by her side when she died, fortunately. And then Caroline's insanity thing has been going on since summer, I think. And so, it goes into 1911 when finally Caroline takes a plea bargain. And the plea bargain is manslaughter. What she doesn't because she finally admitted, she said, I gave OC morphine, but not enough to kill her. And so she admitted to manslaughter, thinking in her unstable mind that when they came down with the verdict or whatever, the agreement, she looked at her lawyer and said, can I go home now? And he said, no. So she was sentenced to 7 years. And after a short time, she presented so much mental illness in jail that they sent her to the Morristown, the state Institute for Mentally Insane at Morristown, where she died of heart failure in 1913.
And Mary?
Mary was acquitted. She moved to Oakland, California. And the last time we hear from Mary, which is very interesting, and I'm going to bring my timeline over here. I hope it's on here somewhere. Last time we hear from Mary was about 1930. Okay. In 36, she was living at 557 37th Street in Oakland, California. Okay. In 1931. Okay. Mary claims the jewelry in 1930. All right. What time is it? 9:53. Okay. I'll wrap this. Okay. There was jewelry found in the safe deposit box in a bank in Murfreesboro. And it had Virginia Wardlaw's name on it. Interestingly, the jewelry was in a fingerless glove. Now, Caroline was notorious for wearing a fingerless glove or wearing fingerless gloves, but who knows why the fingerless glove was in there? Because Caroline would not have put that jewelry in there. She would have pawned it and spent the money. So anyway, it goes on. There's this fellow, Jesse Sparks, lawyer in Nashville, says they owe him money. So he lays claim to the jewelry. Back in those days, that jewelry is worth between $2,000-$3,000. I don't know what it's worth now. So he lays claim to it, but the judge finally auctioned it off. Mary laid claim to it, but they auctioned it off, and I have the name of the guy who won the auction, and so the jewelry may still be in Murfreesboro. And so while this whole thing was going on about the jewelry, Mary contacted the Murfreesboro Banner and made a couple of statements. And she said, Caroline shouldn't have been found guilty, because how can you find someone who is mentally unstable as she was? How can you find someone like that guilty? And she said, Virginia invited her to Murfreesboro because she thought she could control her. Because they already knew that she was ill. They had to bathe her, they had to feed her. She wouldn't bathe for days. She was throwing money around the rooms, literally. And she just acted very erratic. So she was sick.
Rick, how much attention in the media did this murder get in the time?
Oh my gosh, it was a sensation.
Okay.
All over the United States, and even now, one of my researchers, she's from Sweden. She caught on to this, and she has done so much great research. Um, but in those days, yeah, it was all over the United States,
Okay.
all over.
Were they called the Black Sisters in the media?
Um, they were no,
Okay.
they weren't until shortly after. Um, let's see. I'm gonna switch to stop sharing. Okay, am I back?
You are.
Okay. Now, this is one of the first books, The Shadow and the Web, that came out by Mary Allerton. Now, I actually have a letter from Annie Sneed to Mary Allerton about this book, saying, how can you write about our family like that?
Yeah.
And this lady, Mary Allerton, was from Chattanooga, and this was written, I think it was, oh, it was in the 20s, I think.
Okay.
Um, I'm sorry, I don't see the plate in there.
That's all right.
But yeah, that was one of the first things that came out. Of course, this one is very famous. Came out in 1968, which you might be able to find one. The last one I found was a couple of weeks ago for $66, and people are trying to get hundreds of dollars for them now.
Oh.
And this one is really cool. It's got a chapter in it called The Weird Sisters. This is Flowers for Grace by Elizabeth O. House, Howse. It's available from Rutherford County Historical Society. But her very colorful description of Caroline when she first meets her is it's almost demonic. But you're talking about a kid who was maybe 8 years old when she sees Caroline, and she's writing this in her older years, much older years. She might have written it when she was in her 60s or 70s or something like that. But
we do have a question, Rick, that you might be able to answer. So Cynthia asks, in those days, how did the women travel and move so far and so frequently?
I'll train.
Yeah, we knew they had money.
Yeah, they were well known to travel by train, and they often would not even buy a ticket until the last second. Yeah. Oh, and I've collected several magazines that have some really cool stuff in it, like Caroline and Virginia, or Caroline actually devised a code to write in between her and Virginia.
There's a lot to unpack.
Yeah. And so go ahead.
You want to talk a little bit about the process of the filmmaking, like how long from start to finish, and what was that whole experience like for you?
Okay, it took 16 weeks, and I was totally lost at the beginning because I thought, okay, I'm going to cover this whole thing in a 15 to 20 minute, and so I started thinking, where can I get a horse and carriage? Where can I, and so
yeah.
One Sunday I sat down and I was watching this kid, Tyler Mowry, who does a lot of YouTube videos about screenwriting. And so he started just talking about philosophical differences and how it must have philosophical differences. And so I started thinking, narrow it down, 2 days, the day of and the day after. And so wrote that pretty quickly. Because I already knew the story. It's easy to get it down.
For you, it was just hard to, keep it simple.
Yeah, exactly.
Because so much information. Yeah.
Just like today, I ramble on, go from here to there. But the process, it was rough. I had to buy insurance for, shooting in Lynchburg, make schedules for shooting in Lynchburg. My people, my actors are from Lynchburg area. Some of them are from Charlotte Courthouse, so they had to do some traveling. And then one of the guys from Roanoke, a couple of people are local, like Michaela Vest Witten teaches at Christiansburg High School, and Dan Leary, who runs New River Valley Rental. He's worked a lot with New River Stage, and so the production was rough, and it was expensive. It doesn't reflect, that document doesn't reflect all I spent, because I spent so much in gear that I refinanced my house.
Wow.
But I found that it was worth it. Um, you know, and we made a decent bit from the red carpet event at the Grandin. We made, um, I'll just say that I took half of what we made at Christiansburg High School and gave approximately half, which was about $1,300, to the drama department.
Nice.
And then I paid my people for coming in. You know, it's like, you got to drive all this way. You know, so I have to pay them. I'm not going to pay them for driving all the way in from Charlotte Courthouse and
Yeah.
Lynchburg and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the process of, and the one thing, well, two things. My thesis advisor had told us in other classes, he said, if you pay an actor anything, if you offer any money, the level of talent you get is going to be exponential. And it's true. And he also said, hire a composer. He said, those two things will elevate your production immensely.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Gunan has a question. Do you plan on writing a book of your version of what happened?
I don't plan on writing a book, but I plan on, I think the next productions, they will have to be episodic. I don't think it can be done in a feature. Nobody's going to want to sit through 3-4 hours of this at one time.
Well, like we've all had the experience of reading a book and then seeing the film and thinking, like, how do they choose what to highlight and what to eliminate? And that's a very difficult process. And you've got several books worth.
It is difficult. And I was strongly advised by my screenwriting professor to consolidate some of the characters, which I do not want to do.
Yeah.
I think it's cheating, you know, because I said, you know, I told her, so there's three OCs. There's baby OC, there's Virginia Oceana, and then there's OS. She goes, it's too confusing. She said, consolidate the mother and the aunt. I'm like, no, because the aunt doesn't go with them to New York. She doesn't talk to the neighbors about how she's mistreated.
Yeah.
You know, I just can't do it. I want to be true to the history.
So what episode do you think you'll do next? What is the next most?
The one I've already written is called Chapter 1. And that is when Caroline comes to Murfreesboro and crap hits the fan big time. Virginia gets in trouble. She gets in trouble with the bank, and it's in the news. You know, Caroline comes, she does that dirty deed, and then Virginia's trying to save the college. And so she ends up being charged with fraud as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
They've got quite a checkered history.
Oh gosh, yeah. It's like they say, you can't make this stuff up.
Right. Let me invite, it's just after 10. Let me invite folks who are participating to put in some questions. Tell us if you had heard about the Black Sisters. Tell us what parts of the legend or story you're familiar with. Some of you have probably seen the play that was put on about the Black Sisters. Tell us what you know about that production, Rick.
I know very little about the production, but I did have Anna Dalton, who played Caroline. She sat in with us on a table read as both O.S. Pollock and Martha.
Nice.
And although my professor said Martha wouldn't say anything like, and because at one point she says that SH, you know, like I won't say it, but anyway. She said she was a religious lady. I'm like, yeah, but let's throw it in there, you know, because she's telling Caroline, it's like, you haven't done anything since you've been here. You're sorry as owl. But I will invite everybody if they're interested, and I will share this screen very quickly.
Sure.
To screen 3. So this is our group. It's now got over 2,300 members, the Black Sisters Real Story and Facebook. And the reason I chose to do Facebook and no other is because there were some fellows who came to Sundance Collab, which I participate in. And they did a Hulu show called Reservation Dogs. And they said, if you can't pay attention, if you can't put your attention into all these different social medias, choose one.
Mm.
The reason I chose this one is because most of our most of our fans are my age or older. You know, they're in their 50s and up, and so you know they, for the most part, I think they still stick with Facebook.
Using Instagram or yeah.
Yeah, I find them. There's not enough substance to those as far as I'm concerned.
Mm.
And so, you know, like I said, we've got over 2,300 people, and it's grown fairly quickly. It's leveled off, of course, but I tried to populate it every day with news of the day, you know, from that time,
Mm.
which at some points, you know, it gets pretty slow, and it's like, okay, Virginia visited such and such at such and such, but
Well, that takes quite a commitment to make a daily update on something that's 100 something years old. All right.
yeah.
We've got a message from Pat. She said locally sightings of the Black Sisters in the Christiansburg Cemetery and the haunting of the school. She has also heard those same rumors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we talked about that. And so the haunting of the school may in fact be the son and not the sisters, but at least one of the sisters we think is buried at the Sunset Cemetery. So
Yeah, according to multiple newspapers, Virginia's body was brought back and buried at Sunset.
yeah.
But yeah, and I talked to a couple of folks, Ruby, who works at the MCPS offices now. She told me some things. I just took a chance one Saturday on stopping in there, and she and this other fellow were working. They gave me little tours and stuff, and so it was really cool. She had some good stories.
I bet. I bet.
I wish I had filmed it all. I was just using my iPhone, but even that would have been cool.
So have you been able to enter the film into competitions? How is that whole process done?
I have not. I haven't done it. I just haven't tried. You know, I look at other films that are in competitions, and I don't know. I may be too self-critical.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they say you can. It's like these fellows who did Reservation Dogs. They said you can go the competition route, but that's not the only way to go. You know, you can concentrate on marketing, which one of our classes was transmedia marketing or whatever. It was, you know, and me being a graphic designer, it's like I can do my own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, and the marketing that we did for the Grandin and for CHS, we got the word out there. And Grandin, when we got there, it was a Wednesday evening, and there was even a wreck on Interstate 81 going towards Roanoke from Christiansburg. We had to take 221 around and come in through the back way. But yeah, they said that we have never had this many people on a weeknight ever. And when you have anything else you want to show, bring it.
They want to do it. Okay, good.
Yeah.
What about showing it at the Lyric? Have you approached them about doing a similar event?
They cost more than the Grandin, and the Grandin was more central to our fan base. You know, I say that because I assumed that more people would have shown up when we showed it at Christiansburg High School. We had maybe a couple of hundred people there, maybe more, but I expected more. But you know, things had gone on that day as far as you know, there was some kind of festival downtown, which people were probably kind of tired. They wanted to go home. Plus, there was an alumni from Christiansburg that was having a party that night that was also being widely publicized. So
Drawing, yeah.
yeah.
So will the second episode be an easier filming experience based on what you've learned the first time through?
Oh, well, because of the location, this is going to be taking place at Soul Female College. So it's going to be more difficult. And there are going to be locations such as the banker's office.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to have a street location. I don't know how it's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there may be some green screen involved, which I dearly do not want to do. But
No.
there's a lot of amazing stuff that happens on green screen.
Well, the Montgomery Museum, as you I'm sure know, is located in an old bank, which still has a lot of authentic marble floors and grill work and a neat big state. I mean, that's a possibility, and they'd probably be game for it. So
Yeah, and Casey Jenkins actually let me interview Richard Ballinger there.
mhm.
Richard Ballinger did a he did a really long interview about his experiences with the Black Sisters at the middle school. Some
Okay,
pretty funny stuff there too.
yeah, he was principal there a long time. Yes,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, good.
He was
All right.
principal when I was there.
Oh, are you a Christiansburg kid?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Were you aware of the story when you were a kid?
Only because my sister checked this out from the library back in the day when I was in middle school, and she got involved in it.
Okay.
So yeah,
The spark started.
yeah.
All right, we're closing in on 10:15, which is our ending time. So I'm just going to make one more request.
Okay.
Goonan says she heard them hiding under the stage at the Christiansburg show.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's funny.
Oh, this has been so interesting, and I know that there's a lot more to talk about, but I think we at least got the gist, and I hope people will or have watched. There you go. Show us again. I think you might be a little obsessed with Virginia, Rick.
Much.
Do go back and watch the film if you haven't yet, and read the article just to appreciate what it takes to put together even a short film. It's incredible the number of details that you had to take into consideration. I can't imagine. So
Yeah, it never goes as planned. It's like a war.
well, promise she'll come back and show us episode 1 when she's ready.
Oh, I would love to. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Great. Well, thanks for your time today and for sharing your good works with us. And I hope everybody will join us. Our final speaker is next Tuesday, and we'll be talking about some of the major issues that we're all hearing about in public schools today, including book banning and who uses what bathroom and all kinds of good stuff. So we've got a great speaker coming next week. So please join us. And Rick, we all appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great
Thank
day,
you.
everybody.
Yes, thank you.